So let me quickly show you what we got. As you can see, we have an interface that looks a lot like the Google Calendar. It's a fully interactive application, so you could expect that we can just move between months and those months will get updated with the correct dates. We can go to the today, clicking here, so it will reset the calendar. You can also see that we have an indicator that tells which day is today. And in Google Calendar, if you move this one, it will get out of sync with this one. So that also like this. And if we click here, the month will change to that month. So, but also if we click right here, those calendars will get again in sync. And also with the today button, you can create events. So a modal will pop up. So you can give it a name and the event will be selected in the day that we clicked before. So if we click, for example, if we create that, it will have that in the date. So, and we can also create new events just by clicking in the squares. Here we have an event for September 20 and we can give it a name and a description. The description is optional and we can change the label, and you can see that now we have a checkbox that we can use to select or hide events. I'm going to create a new one and another one with a different color. This one is purple and the description is optional, and you can see that now we also have that label. If we click here, you can see that we can hide those events. We can of course update the events by clicking on them, and we can also delete the events like this. And lastly, if we refresh the page, everything will remain because we are using the local storage. So as you can see, it's a really interactive application. And I would say for following the tutorial, you will need to know at least Node-React. It's like an intermediate tutorial. We'll be learning how to, use React hooks. We'll look at some hooks that you might not have used before, like use memo or use reducer. We're also going to be using React context to communicate between components, and in general you will learn how to make like a really interactive application, how to structure that application, and I really hope that that's helpful for you. And well, as you can see, this is a really long tutorial. It took a lot of time to make, so I would really appreciate if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, because that will help me a lot to keep doing this kind of videos. So without further ado, let's start coding the app. Okay, so let me just quickly show you what I have in my VS Code extension. So you can, if you want, you can also follow the things that I have. Is this called React snippets. So this will help me to quickly generate boilerplate for me in some places. You can also install that if you want. I also have prettier, which is just a code formatter. I will be using that to format the React code. I also have this extension called bracket pairing, so I can see visually what are the brackets that match. For emmet, I have this for JavaScript React. You can add it in your configuration. So the item is JavaScript and the value is JavaScript React. So you can use emmet inside your JSX, which I will also be using. So now in the terminal, in whatever path that you are going to start this project, let's use the CLI to create a new React app. It will be something like npms create React app, and I'm going to give it the name of Google Calendar React, like this. It will take a bit, so I will go back in a minute. Okay, so now we need to city into that project. City Google Calendar React. And here we are going to install the dependencies that we need. Because I have yarn, I am using yarn add here. but for you it would be npm. If you are using npm, it will be npm install. And these are the dependencies that we need for now. So I will have some installation notes in the description, or you can copy this from the Tailwind documentation, and let's wait to this to be installed. After that, we're going to install the direct dependencies that we are going to need for this, and this is going to be craco. So this is just a tool that allows us to override the create React configuration that we need for the postcss, and also dayjs, that's a tool to manipulate time. One last thing that I want to add, this Tailwind CSS plugin for forms, and it's really nice for having some default format in our forms that we're going to use. So that would be the last dependency that we need. After that, please open this folder in VS Code. You can do it like this or directly into the Explorer. So now we will have something like this. And here in the root of the file, I'm going to create a new file called craco.config.js like this. And this will be to have the configuration for the create React app override. It will be something like this. So just pause the video and copy this configuration. We're using the dependencies that we installed for this. And now back to package.json, we need to change these scripts. It's not going to be React scripts anymore. It's going to be craco. Like this, create React app configuration override. It's going to be for build and for test. Once we're done with that, we can now generate a new Tailwind CSS config file like this, npx tailwind CLI latest init, and this will generate a new file for us. And now we should have something like this in here, and here we are going to add this purge configuration, and this will be to remove used CSS and this kind of files. And here in plugins, we are going to use the plugin that we install, that's called Tailwind CSS Forms. And now we are going to use that plugin. Finally, the last thing that we need is to change in the source folder. We have an index.css file. We can just remove this, and we are going to paste the Tailwind utilities like this, and now we should be good to go. So make sure that in the index.css file we have that included, and we can just yarn start. And for you, if you're using npm, it will be npm run start. So that should open a new development server. And here you can see that everything has been set up. Alright, so let's start coding the app. Let's just remove this as we are not going to use this information. Then what I'm going to do is in the source folder, I'm going to create a new file called util.js. In this file, I will have some shared functions that I want to use across certain components. And the first function that I want to have is a function that will give me an array that contains a day for each day of the calendar. It's like a two-dimensional array. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to import the library day that we installed, and this library is just a utility library that we can use to easily manipulate time in our code. Then I'm going to export the function that I want, and it's going to be called getMonth. And this function will receive as a parameter month, and this is going to be a number between 0 and 11. So the month is going to be represented, starting from 0. And here I'm just going to have a default value, and this is going to be dayjs. Dayjs like this will be an instance of an object that has a bunch of information, and if we don't pass anything here, it will be the present moment. Just like the date object, it will be the present moment, and here we have a function that will give us the month between 0 and 11, so that's the default value in case we don't pass anything. Next, I'm going to grab the year. So the year is just going to be the same, dayjs that year, and this will give us again a number that represents the current year. And now I want to know the first date of the month, and I want to know if it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I wanted to know that because I want to place that in our two-dimensional array. I want to know if it's, for example, if the first day of the month is Friday. So we will have at the beginning of the array, we will have the previous days of the previous month. So that's what I want to know that. So I will just say first day of month equals dayjs. And for this one, and here we can pass the different values to create a new date. So in this case, it's going to be a date object. That's also possible to pass that here. So we're going to pass that. And here the date object also has some constructor properties, and this could be the year, the month, and the day. So the year is going to be the current year, right? The month is going to be the month that we have as a parameter, and the day is going to be the first one. So this is going to create a new dayjs object that represents the first day of the month. And here we can, from the dayjs library, we can just invoke the date function, and this will give us an index that represents 0 to 6, and the 0 is going to start on Sunday and 6 is going to be on Saturday. So it will tell us in which day of the week it is the first day of the month. Next, I'm going to declare this variable called days matrix, and this is going to be the first part of our two-dimensional array. So we're going to declare a new array. And remember that we have in the Google Calendar, we can see that we have 5 rows, right? 5 rows for each month. That's a constant. And we have 7 columns that represents every day of the week. So first we're going to start with the rows. We're going to generate the rows. So we have 5 rows. And this array, we're going to use the fill method to fill every row, and every row is going to be filled with an empty array, right? And this is the array that's going to have every day of the week. Next, we're going to map that array, right, to populate the array. So here I'm just going to declare this like this. So for each item, each array, we're going to return another array. So that's why this array has 2 dimensions. So this new array is going to have, as the length of this array is going to be the number of columns that we have. So in this case, it's going to be 7, because we have 7 columns for each day of the month, for each day of the week. And then we are going to fill that with, for now, we're just going to say null. Then we're going to map through that array. And here is where we are going to have every individual day of that array. So don't forget here to return this array from this map function. And here I'm going to keep a counter. So I'm going to say current month count equals 0. So we start first from 0, but actually we're going to use negative numbers because there's a really nice thing that, for example, if we pass to the date object, the date is going to be 2021, right? The month is going to be, well, let's say is September, so it's going to be 8. And if we pass a negative number, for example, -1, so you would think that will throw an error because there's no negative -1 in a date. But what actually happen is that it will return an object that represents the month before and the last day. So that's really handy for what we are going to do. The same from the opposite. Let's say we have a date for, 44. So it's going to go through the end of this month, and then it's going to take in consideration the next month, and it will return a valid date. So that's what we are going to do, and that's why we're going to subtract the first day of the month. So the initial value, let's say we are in the first day of the month is Wednesday, so it's going to be -3. And for what we are going to do here, we're first in this array, because we're looping in the second array, we're going to first increase that current month count by 1. So every time we feed a new value, we're going to increase, and then we're going to return a new dayjs object that has a new date as a parameter. And here again we take the year, we take the month, and here we're going to use this counter. So if we think about this, the first day, let's say the first item in our array is going to be, because the month starts on Wednesday, so the first day is going to be let's say August 28th. And even though we are passing the month as September, because we're providing a negative value here, it would convert to a valid date. So that's really nice for what we are trying to achieve. So here I can just return this matrix that we have. All right, don't forget to start the development server with yarn start. And right now we don't have anything, but let's just console.log the function that we just created to see what the function returns. So if we go to here, we can first import that function from util. So here we have get month, right? So I will remove this one, and here I can say console. So I want to see this as a table, so I can say console.table, and here I want to get this, and I can pass anything, so it should give me the current month. So if I save, and here I open this right here, let me see, and yeah, we have our months, so we can see that we have like a calendar, and here we can see all the values. So for example, we have September 7th is going to be in the second row. So in the first row we have 31 of August, which is correct. Here we have September 1 of 2021, which is also correct. So as you can see, we have a representation of all of the days of the month. So this is what we are going to take, and with this information we're going to render the calendar. And we also, for example, can change here the number, right? So for example, this will be April, so the values should be different. It should be different. So here you can see that the first item is March 30, so which is also correct for this case. Alright, so the next thing is going to be, I'm going to give some structure to this application. We're going to divide this in individual components. So for now, I'm going to add this React fragment as a parent to all of the childs. And well, if you don't know, React fragment is just a way to provide an invisible parent that's not going to be represented as the node in the web page. And it's really useful when we don't want to display like invisible divs to grab everything. The next thing is I'm going to have a class, a div that's going to have the class of, and this is we're going to use the Tailwind classes. So this is going to have a height of screen. So this is going to fill all of the screen as a minimum height. And here we're going to have we're going to display this as flex, and this is going to be in columns. Yep. So it's not going to be like one to another, but like in rows. So this is how it works in Flex. You have to give it this to have the flex one between another. Here we're going to have a component that does not exist yet. That's going to be the calendar header, and this is just going to be like this. It's not going to have a closing tag. And after that, we're going to have another flex component that's going to have a flex of 1. So it's going to cover all of the rest of the space. And this is because this is like we have 2 rows, right? So this is just going to cover everything. Here we're going to have a sidebar that we don't have yet. Sidebar, and below that we are going to have like a mount component. So now let's just create those components. I'm going to use a new folder and create a new folder with the name of components, and here I can start. I'm going to start with the calendar header.js. And here I'm going just to use the snippets that I have. So React functional component, and this will populate a component for me. Then I'm going to have the other component called sidebar.js, and again I'm going to use the snippet. Then I'm going to have the mount.js, and again I can use this snippet right here. So now that we have those components, it's time that we import those. Import calendar header. We're also going to import that sidebar, and finally we are going to import the month component from components/month. So we have all of our components. So let's start first with the month. So because we now have the month right here, we can provide the month information. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to use a state, and this is going to be local state. It's not going to be global state for now. And I'm going to have 2 variables. The first one is going to be current month, and set current month right like this. And here I'm going to use the state, and the initial value is going to be our get month function. Then I'm going to have an index that's going to change the month, and we're not going to use that index yet, but well, let's well, for now we're just going to have the current month, right? And here I can pass as a parameter, I can pass that like this, month equals, it's going to be the current month. So now that we are passing that, we need to read that from the props like this, month. And here what we are going to do is we are going to first declare some classes that we are going to have here. So the first one is going to be flex1. So because the parent is a flex component, the children is going to have this, so it's going to expand. Then we are going to have a grid, right? So we're going to also use grid for this. And with Tailwind, it's really simple to declare like grids. We first need to give the grid class, and then we need to define the columns. So remember that we have how many columns? We have 3 columns. So with this we will have seven columns, sorry. And then we need to define the rows. So we're going to have 5 rows. So it's just that simple. And with that we have a grid, the grid that we need. And here we are going to remember that this is a map, an array. So we are going to map through that month, and for each item of the first dimension of the array, we have a row that represents the week. And here we are going to read the row and also the index of that row. Here again, we're also going to return React that fragment, because we don't want a real DOM element. We want a fake one so we can use our grid components. So we need root elements for that. There's a syntax error here. Let me fix it. So we have this. I need another. Right there, like that. So that's correct syntax. And this, as all of the map elements of the map function, is a key. The key is going to be just the index. And for each one of these elements, we're going to also loop through that row, because that row is also an array that has every day of the week. And here I can map again, and I'm going to have a day, and I'm going to have another index that I'm going to give it this name. And here I'm going to return a component that is not present yet, but we are going to create it soon. And here this is going to have the day as a parameter, and again it's going to have the key, and it's going to be this one. So we have this, but now let's just create that day component, and this is going to represent every individual item in our grid. So again, let's use the snippets, and here I can read that day. And for now, I can just say day.format, because this is an instance of dayjs. We have this method called format, and this will just display the format of that date. So now if we save, if we go here, we see that we have an error because we haven't declared the component yet, imported the component yet. So let's do that. So we just need to import day from day. If we say, you can see that we have a grid with every individual day of the week. And because the sidebar is just an empty div right now, our component just fills everything. We're going to fix that. But for now, let's go back to the day component, and here we can add some styles. So we're going to have a class name of border. So we're going to have some nice border for each cell in the grid. Then we're going to have that border with the color gray of 200. And then we are also going to have a flex and a flex call. And right here, we are going to have this, not like this, but in a p tag. And this is going to have the class of text small with a padding of 1 and a margin in the y-axis of 1 and with text at the center like this. And here the value is just going to be the day that we have before, but now it's just going to have a format like this. So this is going to just display 2 numbers instead of the whole date that we have before. And all of this is going to be inside a header component, right? So we have the header, and this is going to have also these classes. So this is going to have a class of flex, then a flex call, and items center. So everything is centered on the y-axis, on the x-axis. So we have that because we need 2 elements here, and the other elements is going to have a class name of text small and a margin top of 1. And this is going to be just the day, but represented in another way like this, day format. And the format is going to be like this, and this is going to return the day, but in just 2 letters. And here I'm going to uppercase this with this method, to uppercase. So now if I save, I should have something like this. That's what I wanted. So we have, in the first part, we have the day like this in 3 letters, and below we have just a number. All right. So now we have well, it's not a problem, but in the Google Calendar, it's not like we are repeating this everywhere. You know, these headers is just needs to be present in the first row. So for that, I'm just going to go back to the month.js, and here I can say something like row index equals, and it's going to be the index that we have here is going to represent that index. I can say, I can read from the props like this, row index, and what I can do here is I can just check if this row index equals 0, which is going to be the first row. If that's true, only on that case we are going to display this. So now if I go back here, we can see that we never have that. So row index, and here we are I didn't save this, so that's why it didn't show up. So now it will only be present in the first row, which is what we wanted. Before keep going, I almost forgot that we need some extra configuration in the index.html file. It's just some fonts that I want to use for the app, and also some icons. So the links are going to be in the source code, but if you also want, you can pause the video and copy the links. So these are the links. It's just a reference to the material icons that we are going to use for the app, and also another for the Open Sans font that we are going to use. Besides that, I also want to change the Tailwind configuration to use the new font. So for that, we can just go to the file, and here we need to extend the theme, and here I can use the font family utility that we have, and I'm going to replace the sans property with Open Sans. That's the font that I just added. And also while we are here, let's add this new variation of grid template columns, and this is going to be for something that we're going to soon use. It's going to be a 1 feet variation, and it's going to be 1 fraction and then 5 fractions. It's just going to be a utility that we're going to need in the future. So you might need to refresh this to pick up the new fonts, or maybe stop the developer server, but well, we should be good to go now. And now let's continue. So while we are here, one other thing that we need is that we want to display an indicator that we know that this is the current day. So instead of having curly braces, just a string here, I'm going to have a template string. And here I'm going to have a function that's going to be get current day class. And this function is just going to, let's declare it now. The function is just going to return a string. So we are going to compare. We're going to compare the day that we have. We're going to format that because it's easier to compare strings. And here we can give it this format: day, month, year. So if this is equals the current day, right? Day that format. So if we don't pass anything here, it's just going, well, we need dayjs, right? We need to import dayjs, and if we don't pass anything here, it's just going to default to the current day. Then we can just format that, and we are going to use the same format. With this, we know if this day is the current day, and if this is true, so if this is true, we're going to return a background of blue 600 with the text white, and we are going to round this, rounded full with these classes, and a width of 7. And if this is not true, we are just going to return nothing, an empty array. So if we say, we should be able to see something like this, because today is Monday 13. Well, the day I'm filming this is Monday 13 of September. So that's why it's like this. So now let's continue with the header. We have the header right here. So for this, we are going to have, we're going to use the header class. It's better to use something like this. Then I can give it a class name, and this is going to be of padding 4 in the XY axis and padding 2 on the Y axis. Then this is also going to be of legs, and we are going to center everything vertically with items center. Then I'm going to have an image, so this is going to be the logo, and here I'm going to create a new folder called assets, like this. And again, these assets are going to be present in the GitHub repository. These assets is just the calendar logo, and well, this is an SVG that we're going to use later. And here I can just import that logo like this from assets like this, and here we have logo.png, and their source is going to be that logo, right? Then I can just give this an alt of, I don't know, calendar, and a class name, and this class is going to have a margin right of 2, and a width of 12, and a height of 12. If we say, we should be able to see that like this. So this is not correct. It should be up. Let's see what this is not working. So if we go to the app.js file, I think this is wrong. Flex calls. Let me double check. Yeah, it's flex call like this, not columns. Yeah, so now is where it should be. Another thing that's not showing is the borders. So the borders should be displaying. So let's see what's up with that. So we have a border. So the reason why it's not showing is because it's not border, it's border. So that should fix that. And we can see that we have our header where we should have it. Let's continue with the header. So we also need, where is the header? So below the image, we need an H1. And this H1 is going to say just like this, calendar. And it's going to have some class name of margin right of 10 and text Excel, text gray of 500, and a font bold, a bold font. Alright, so we have the calendar. Now we need some buttons to navigate between the calendars. So this is going to be a button. I will use emmet for this. It's going to have a border. It's also going to be rounded and with a padding in the y-axis of 2 and a padding on the x-axis of 4 and a margin right of 5. And for this button, well, this is just going to say today, so this will navigate for the current day. And then we are going to have another button, and this is going to be for navigating between months. And this is just going to have the span, and here as content we can just say chevron underscore left, and this, because we are using material icons, this will be replaced with a real icon. And we also need to give it the class of material icons. Well, this one is outlined, also cursor pointer, because we want to have it like a button, and we also want it to be gray, and with an accent of 600 and a margin on the x-axis of 2. So I will just copy this and I will have it again, but this time it's not going to be left, it's going to be right. So if we save that, we should have something like this. And with this, we should be able to navigate between different months. Okay, now it's a good time to integrate the React context so we can communicate between this and this one. So the moment we click here, we're going to change a global index that represents the current month, and that's going to change the month, right? It's the same for this thing. So let's just do that. And well, we're going to create a new folder in the source directory called context. And here we're going to have two files. We're first going to have a global context. So this is going to be the context for the whole application. Usually you want to divide the contents between different trees of parts of your app, but because this is a simple app, we're just going to have like a global context that's going to be for everything. And here we are going to have a context wrapper, context wrapper.js. And this one is going to be a React component. So we're going to just provide this component as a wrapper of all of our application, and then we can provide the context to that wrapper so all of the children can access the context. So let's start with the context itself. So this is just we're going to import React from React, and here we can say something like const global context like this equals React that create context. And right here we are going to have as a context, we're going to have a whole object where we are going to keep all of the state for this app. Well, you can also declare individual parts of context, but it's just simpler to do it like this for this. And here we're going to have something like this. That's going to be the month index like this. And well, I can just give it a random value. This is just going to be, well, not a random value. It's going to be useful for having like IntelliSense between the VS Code. It doesn't need to be the real value, because the real initial value, because later we're going to have that in the wrapper. So for now it just can be 0, and here we're going to have a function that's going to change this value. So set month index, and here I can just give it this value to have IntelliSense. So and we can say index. So we have declared the context. Now just export. Let's export that context like this. And now let's move with the context wrapper. So here this is going to be where we are going to use the provider function for the context. So we need first to import that global context from the same directory, and in the JX we can provide that to the component like this, global context that provider. And here we need to, and what's going to be here is just going to be our whole application. So we can access that with the props right here, and here we can just pass those props, that children, like this, and this is going to be our whole application. And this is a really handy way of providing context. And I wanted to do it like this because this is a React component, we can use a state, and we are just going to duplicate the keys that we have before as a state right here, and I can import use state, and I can say, and I will just copy, so and I will recommend you to do the same so you don't have any mistakes when declaring this. So it's going to be the month index, and this is from our previous file, the context file. So, and here we have set month index like this, and I can here just use the state, and here I'm going to use a real default value. I'm going to import from dayjs, and here we are just going to have a new instance of dayjs, and it's going to be the current month, right? If we don't pass anything here, it's just the current date. So we have that, and now our context provider needs a value, and here we can just pass this as an object, and we have the month index, and then we have the set month index. Okay, so we have a global place where we're keeping track of the index. So now what I'm going to do is here in the month component, what I'm going to do is here in the app component, I'm going to listen to that index, right? So first we're going to use a hook for accessing that context. We can use the use context hook, and we also need to import the global context, right? From context / global context. And now I can declare that like this. I will do construct because it's an object. I can deconstruct that, and I can say use context. I need to pass the context object that's right here, and here I can just use the variable that we need, that's month index, right? So this is the current month index, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use another hook from React that's called use effect, and this use effect comes really handy in this situation because we can just pass a React dependency list, and this is going to be the state that we want to react to. It's just going to be the month index. And right here, I can just say set current month, and the current month is just going to be the month index that we have. So we are reading from the context, but now we need to write to the context, and we're going to write to the context in the header. I'm going to do the same here. I can do it like this with VS Code. I can just say const equals use context. It will auto import that, and I can just declare like that, and will auto import the global context. And here I first need to read from the month index, and I also need to set the month index. All right, so when is going to change the index of the month? It's just going to be when we click into those buttons, right? Let's add this in the button component right here. So if we click in the chevron left, I'm going to have a function that's called handle pref month. and here I'm going to declare that handle pref month. And what this is going to do is just going to change the month index, and it's just going to be the current month index -1. And I'm also going to have another one, handle next month, and this one is just going to be set month index, and we are just going to add one to that current value, and here is where we need to use that. So I can access the onClick and I can use this right here. So now it's not working, and month.map is not an option. So what's happening is that we broke something here when we set the current month. So let's just see what's that current month console.log month index. Oh, I think I know what's happening here. So we are just setting the current month with a number, but it's not like this. We need to use our get month function, and then we need to pass that number, that index. So now it should work. Yep. So we have right now we have September. And if I click here, nothing happens. Let's see if we have any error. So we are having the function. So this one shouldn't be like this. It just needs to be like that. Let's see if that fixes the problem. Still nothing. Click. So the main issue right here is that we declared our context wrapper, but we are not using it anywhere. We need to use the context wrapper. So I'm going to use this index.js file, and here I'm going to import that context wrapper from right here, and I just need to have as a child the whole application right here. So this is going to grab everything, and now it should work. Famous last words. And you can see that we can switch between months. So now that we have the month, I can display the month right here, just like we have in Google Calendar. And let's just do that. So if we have to go to the header, right here we are going to have, after all of this, we're going to have an h2 tag, and this is going to be use again dayjs. Let's make sure to import dayjs, and here we can just have a new date that's going to have the dayjs that year as the first value. The second argument is going to be just the month index, and we can leave it like that. We can actually create a date without having all of the parameters here. Then I can just format that date, and the format that I want is going to have a month like this. It's going to give me the full month in letters, and like this is going to give me all of the year, the full year. We have that, but we also are missing some styles. So here I can give it this style of margin left, then a text with extra large, and then a text gray. with 500 of accent and a font bold. If we go back, we should be able to have something like this that represents the month that's currently being displayed. So if we change that, and one cool thing is what would happen if we go to December. Do we need to change the year? Actually not, because of that date trick. If we have like 2021 month 13, it will just display the correct year. So that's just working. So the last thing of the header is this today button that we have. Where is that? So this needs to reset the calendar to the present month, and that's going to be quite simple. We are going to attach an event, and we can say handle reset. This is going to be this function handle reset, and guess what's going to do this function? It's just going to set the month index to the current month like this, right? Month. Let's see if that works. So if we are in April, if we click today, it will just reset that. Also, if we go to the past, we can see that we are backed into September. Now let's continue with the sidebar. Let's go to the component. We don't have anything yet, but we're going to start. So first we're going to have the button that we can create a new event. So it's going to be called create event button. It doesn't exist yet, but let's just declare the component for now. And it's going to be in the same folder. And here, well, first this is going to use the aside tag. It's going to have a class name of border. So we have some border there, and a padding of 5, and a fixed width of 64. Then we are going to have that button right here, and I'm going to save. It's probably going to throw an error because we don't have the file yet. So let's create the file, create event button.js, and here again we are going to use a functional component with the help of the snippets. And here in this button is just going to be a button like this, and it's going to have a class name of border. We're going to have a padding on the y-axis of 2, a padding on the x-axis of 2, well, just a padding of 2. Then we're going to have it rounded full like this. It's going to be a flex also with the items at the center. Then we are going to have a shadow. So this is how we declare shadows with Tailwind, and it's going to be the size of medium. And a hover state. In the hover state is going to be, the shadow is going to be bigger. I'm going to have a shadow of 2XL. And here I can then have an image. And this is going to have this plus icon that we have in the assets folder. This plus. So I can say plus, well, it's actually as an SVG, but we can access that like this, and plus that SVG. So that's going to be the source of image like this, and an alt, we can say something like create event, and the class name is going to have a fixed width of 7 and a height of 7 like this. We have that, and now we just need another element that's going to say create, and this is going to have a class name of padding left of 3 and padding right of 7. So that should display something like this. Yep, that's exactly what we wanted. And at the moment it doesn't do anything, but we're going to come back to this later. And we have the create button. We're also going to have another that's going to say small calendar. So this is the small calendar that we have on the left, and we can declare it like this, small calendar, with this snippet, and let's add it right away here. We can import the small calendar, and we can just declare the calendar here. So this calendar is going to have a different state for the month and for the current month, and for the index is going to have a local state, because when you move through the calendar, it is not in sync with the big calendar. That's how it works in the Google Calendar. So we're going to replicate that here. So it's going to have like a local state for the index of the month. Set current month index. We're going to use the state from React. Don't forget to import that. And here we also need to import dayjs, and it's going to be the month, the current month. Then we need to have something like current month. So it's like a local state for this. Set current month. And the initial value is going to be the get month function. Don't forget to import that. And here we are also going to have an use state, use effect hook. Don't forget to import that from React. And as we have in the other component, every time the month, so this is the local current month index changes, we are going to set the current month with the get month function that receives the parameter of the current month index. So this is a local state that we have here. So now we have that. And what we are going to have here is just going to be the HTML for that calendar. First, we're going to have some kind of header that's going to control the calendar, but let's start with the wrapper of everything. So this is going to have a margin of 9. It's just the wrapper, and then we are going to have another div that this is going to be for the header of the, well, we can give it a name of header. It's going to be the header of that mini calendar. So it's going to have a class name of flex, and we're going to hostify between the content. So it's in both sides of the container, and here we're going to have with a class name of text gray, It's going to be some text that's going to display the current month in the font of bold. And here we are going to have a new date from that we can create with dayjs, and here we are just again have the year as a first parameter, and the second parameter is going to be the current month index, and this comes from the local state. And here we are going to have this format in similar way as we have at the top. It's going to have the month like this and the year like this. So if I save that, we should have now a string that represents the current month. So this is what we wanted. It's similar to this one. We could probably have this in a separate component, so we don't repeat that, but it's okay for now. And next to that, we're going to have these buttons, similar to the ones that we have at the top. And here we have something like class name of material icons outlined. Then we have a cursor of pointer and a text gray with 600 of accent and a margin in the x-axis of 2. Here we just have the chevron left, and I'm going to copy this again and have it like this, but for chevron right. And we should have two icons like this. So this is what we wanted. And now we can attach an event here in every button, and it's going to be kind of similar of what we have in the header component. So it's going to be function handle pref month, and what this is going to do is set, but this is the local state that we have here. The current month index is going to be the current month index -1. The same for the future handle next function handle next month, and this is going to have a current month index +1. So now we need to just attach those to these buttons on click. And here we have handle pref month, and for this one we have on click handle next month. So you can see that we can go through every month, and it's different from this one. But there's also another thing is in Google, that if you change this one off, or if you click this one, this calendar also needs to go back to the initial, to keep in sync. So this can move independently, but when you click here, this will be in sync. So we can do that, but just using the context that we have. So I can import from, I can declare the context here like this, const equals use context. It will needs first to import that from React, and then we can use our global context, and we need to import that, and here we can read the month index. This is the global month index, and we can use another use effect hook and make sure to import that from React. And as a dependency, we need the month index. So every time the month index changes, the global one, we are going to set the current month, this one, set current month index, yeah, like this one, to this value that comes from the global object, the global context. So now if we go back here and we navigate, but for example, we click today, it didn't work. So let me see that again. So if I click today, so it works for these cases, but seems that it doesn't work the first time, the today button. Alright, so the reason why it's not working when we click and it's not resetting the month is because useEffect has an optimization that it will not be triggered if the previous value equals the same value, and that's exactly what's happening. So what we can do is just check if the month index equals the current month. If that's true, we're going to take the month index and we are going to add the current, we're just going to add a random value, and this will give us a number between 0 and 1, but actually this will not reach to 1, so that's what we need. It will just be between 0 and, I don't know, 999, and if only if this is true, and if this is not true, we're just going to return the current month, right? It looks a little bit ugly what we are doing, but it will do the trick for us for now. And because we now have a decimal, what we can go into the util.js file, and here we are going to replace that decimal with an integer, and I'm just going to replace the month with taking the math function, that floor, so this will not round, it will just give me the integer and I can just use the month. So now we're going to display the calendar, and we're just going to use a div for the container of that, and it's going to have a class of grid. We're also going to use a grid for this. We are going to have again 7 columns. And for this, we're going to have 6 rows, and that's because we're also going to display the names of the days. So that's why we have 6 rows. So let's start with that. We're going to loop into the first row of the month just to grab the initials of the days. So I'm going to map that, and this is going to be have a day. For each item we're going to have a day and an index, and here we can return a span element. That's the content is going to be that date in the format of like this of TT, and here we can just use this char add method from the array to just grab the initial. So we just have the first char character there, and now I will also want to add a key for this. That's going to be the index, and we need a class name that's going to be of text small and padding in the y-axis of 1 and text center. So let's see how that looks. So yeah, it's just going to be the initials for that. I think it's something is wrong with the initials also here, so it should start with Sunday. Let's see what's going on there. So the issue is right here inside the utils file, and here we have our get month function in the utils file. And because I was explaining that we can have negative numbers, I forgot to remove the negative number here. So this should not be negative, it should just be 1. And now we should, yeah, we have it as Sunday, as it should be. So the week starts at Sunday, and we have the correct values there. So let's return to the small calendar component, and below the headers we are going to loop into the current month, and here we're just going to grab the whole month. We're not going to grab the first value, and we have a row and an index again here, and we can return some JSX, and this is going to be react.fragment. Again, it's going to be just a fragment, not a real DOM element. The key is going to be this one that we have here, and here we just going to loop again into every row. So we have the row, that's a week, and here we can map through that day. For every day, and we also have another index right here, and for each day we are going to return a button, and it's going to have a span value here, and this is just going to be, again, it's just going to be the day, that format, that, and with the format of t, so it's just going to be 1 digit of the number of the day. And here we can give it a key. The key is going to be the second index, and the class name, it's going to be of, here it's also going to be dynamic, because we want to have like a specific class for the current day. So first start with things that are not dynamic. That's going to be a padding of the y-axis of 1 and a width of full, so the button fills all of the container. And here we are going to have another class name, and it's just going to be of text small, like this. So let me save and see how it's looking, and it's looking good. So we can go through different months, and what we need now is we just need to highlight the current day like we did before. And I'm going to have a function that's going to say get day class, and this is going to receive as an argument, it's going to receive the day. And here we can say something like this. We can say something like, well, we can just define the format here, and we have day, and we also have the month, and we also have the year. We can say something like now day equals day dayjs. So remember to import dayjs, and we can give the format that we have here, and the current day is going to be the day that we have as a parameter here, and this is also going to have the format that we have right here. So now we can just use an if statement. So if now day equals the current day, if that's the case, we're just going to return PG blue 500. It's going to have a background of blue. It's going to be rounded full, so it's a circle, and it's going to have the text white. Else, so if that's not the case, we're just going to return an empty array, an empty string. So that should, and we need to use this method. So we can use that in here. When we have this dynamic, we can add that like this, and we can just pass the day that we have here. So now it should display something like this for the current date. So that's what we want. Okay, so one thing that we need to correct here is that if we click, you can see that these arrows just go all over the place. They're not like static, and for that we just need to take these buttons and just have them in an individual element, in a parent element like this. So if we have them like that, now it should just stick in one place, so it doesn't move all over the place. One feature that Google Calendar has is that if you click one number, for example, you click that and it will have a different background. And for example, if you're in October or November and you click that number, it will change this other calendar. So let's implement that. And again, we're going to use the context for that. So let's just go to the context, to the global context, and here we are going to have other values here. So we can say something like small calendar month, and the first value is going to be null. Well, this is just for IntelliSense. Well, it can be a number. And here we are going to have a setter for that. So set small calendar month, and this is going to be a number, a function. We can declare the function like this, and we need to use this into the context wrapper. So I will duplicate this, and I will just copy and paste this to make sure that it has the same names. And the initial value is going to be a null value for this. It's going to be null. And here I can just pass those properties as state, so we can use them in our tree. So small calendar like this. And here we are going to use the use effect hook. Make sure that you import that from React, use effect. And here we're going to have as a dependency, it's going to be that small calendar month, And because the initial value is null, we don't want to run this the first time. So only if this is different than null. So we can say something like this: if small calendar is different than null, only in that case we are going to change the month index to that small calendar month. So we are going to change that so the whole calendar updates with that. So now what we need to do is just go to the small calendar component, and in this button, so in this button we're going to have an on-click event. And what's going to happen here is that we are just going to set that calendar month, and we need to use the context for that. So we need to read from the context the set small calendar month, and that's going to be just the current month index that we have here. The month index that we have in this state. So if we save that, so now it should, if we click for example in December, this should change. The last thing that we need to do is we need to change the when we click into the number, we need to change the class. So for that, we're going to have something like this. In the global context, we're going to have a selected day as day selected, like this, and the initial value is going to be null. And below that we can have the set day selected, and this is going to be also a function, so we can declare that just to have intelligence there. And if we go to the wrapper, we can declare those values here. I will just copy that again to make sure I don't make a mistake. So I can use that. The first value is going to be null, and then I can use that here. So as day selected and set day selected. So now I can go back to the small calendar, and here besides having that, I can also say, and we need to use the context. So let's go back to the context, and here we can set day selected, and also let's read from the day selected property here. So now if I click in the button of the day, I can say set day selected. It's just going to be the current day that we have access here. And now here in the day class, I'm going to read that selected day. So, and I can have something like this: selected day is going to be equal to the selected. So we're first going to make sure that the date selected is different from null with this Boolean condition, and if that's the case, we can just grab the day selected and use the format that we have here, so we can compare the format. Now we need to use that. So I'm going to add another else if here. So, and we'll just copy that right here. And here I can return a different string for that case. And here we need a condition. and the condition is going to be if the current day, the day that comes from the template, equals the selected day. If that's the case, we're going to have a background of blue with an accent of 100. It's going also to be rounded full, but the text is going to be blue 600, and we're going to have a font that's bold. So let me go back quickly here. So if we click, you can see that the selected day gets highlighted with these different colors. So we have the display part, I think, almost finished. But now what we need to do is we need to be able to create new events. So that's just going to be a model, and let's just create that model. It's just going to, well, not a folder, but a new file that has the name of event model.js. Let's use the snippet to have a functional component here, and let's start with the model. So we are going to have a div that's going to grab everything, and it's going to have the class name of the height of the screen, the height of the screen. It's also have the width of full, so it has everything. It's going to be fixed, so it's placed in front of everything. It's going to have a left of 0 and a top of 0. It's just going to be flex. It's going to be justify at the center, so all the items are at the same center, and also items center. This is just the overlay, right? It's not the model. Now we are going to have the model, so I'm going to use the form tag for that. We're not going to have an action, and the class name is going to be of background white. It's going to be rounded. LG is not going to be full rounded, just a little bit, and it's going to have a shadow of 2 times XL with a width of 1/4. So it's just the width of the model. And now let's start with a header. The header is going to have a class of background gray 100. It's going to have a padding of 4 in the XY in the x-axis, and a padding of 2 in the y-axis. Is also going to be flex with the content in between, so it's in every corner, and the items are in the center. So this is going to be the header of the model, where we are going to have the X button to close the model. So let me just add now, and we are going to have an icon, and this is an icon that has the material icons class, icons outlined. So this is outlined material. Yep, it's going to have a text of gray with an accent of 400. Now let's have the name of the icon. That's dry handle. And below that, we're going to have a button that has another icon, and this is going to be the icon for closing the model. So we can, the name of the icon is just close. So we have the basic structure of the model and a way to close it. So we are going to add this model as a component into the root of our app. And here I'm going to import that event model, and I'm going to add that model right here. Like that. Event model. Let's save it and see how it looks. So we can see that we have the model, but it's always been shown. And that's happening because we need to control that with the state. So if we go back to the global context, we are going to have some state here to show the model, and it's just going to be show event model. It's going to be the default, it's going to be false, and here we're going to have a set show event model, and this is going to be a function. Now let's go back to the wrapper, and here I will first duplicate this, and I will copy and paste this right here, and the initial value is false, and now we can have this as values. So show event model and set show event model, so we can use them in our application. And here we are going to read that from the context, show event model. So because this is a boolean, we can use conditionals to say only if the show event model is true. Only in that case we're going to display this component. And where we are going to set that to true is in the button that we have here, that is create event button, and here we need to use the context. So let's use that context, use context, import that from React, and also import our context. And here we can use the set show event model, and this is going to be true once we click into that button. So once we click into that button, we can set show event model to true. And once it's going to be false if we go back to the event model. So if we click here on click, it's going to do just that. So import, let's also consume the context here. Remember to import use context and also import our global context. And now we can set show event model, and we can set that in once we click into the close button. So we're going to have the callback that calls that, and this is going to be false because we're closing that model. So now if we click, we can see that we can show or hide the model. So let's add content to that model. Okay, so below the model, we're going to have another div that's going to have a pairing of 3. And this is going to be the body of the model. And inside here, we're going to have a grid element. And this is going to have that special property that we created. This calls 1/5. So this is going to be the columns, and we don't need to specify the rows here. And we're going to have the items aligned to the end and a gap between the columns in the y-axis of 7. So we have some spacing. Here I'm going to have an empty div. So that's okay. We're going to have an empty div here, and here we're going to have an input. So let me just save it to see how it's looking. And you can see that we have an empty column here and we have an input here. And let's continue with the input. So the input is going to have a name of title, and it's going to have a placeholder of add title. So this is going to be the place where we give a title to the event. The value is going to be a title variable that we don't have yet, so let's declare that. And this is just a state, so it's going to be use state. Remember to import that, and the initial value is going to be an empty array, and this is going to have a state and title and set title. So we are reading the value, but we also need to update the value, and we can do that in the onChange event. Right here we have a callback with the event, and we can set the title with the event that target that value. So this is the value of the input. We are reading from the state, and we are also updating the state. This is also going to be required. So it's going to be required, and now we need to give some styles. So the styles is just going to be a padding top of 3 with a border of 0, because we want to reset that form. And this will also, some styles also come from the plugin that we have in the Tailwind config, this plugin. So it's not the same. If you have this plugin, it will be different, but yeah, just to call out that. And here we have border of 0, text gray of 600. So we have the text is going to be extra large. The font is going to be semi-bold. We're going to have a padding in the bottom of 2, a width of full, so it takes all the container. Border bottom of 2, and once we have, and now let's also add some color to the border. So the border is just going to be border gray of 200. Now we're going to have some styles when we focus into the input. This is going to be just focus out. So when we focus the outline, we have an outline by default in all of the inputs. So we're going to remove that outline. We're also going to remove the ring. So this is another property that we have. And by default it's going to be 0, and once we focus, the border is going to be blue 500. So those were a lot of classes. If we save, title is not defined, so I made a typo here. It's like this. So we have that, and we have this nice effect when we focus into the input it turns into blue with this only CSS. So now we're going to have another icon, so I'm going to copy that and paste that below the input. The class is going to be the same, but the name is going to be schedule. That's the name of the icon, it's just this one. And this in here, we are just going to display in a p tag, we are going to display the current day. So, I forgot to mention, so once we click, how we can create a new is but having this selected. So the moment we click create, it's going to select either the current day or the day that we have selected right here. So we already have that. We already have that state, but we just need to consume that state. So it's called day selected, and we can display that in here. Day selected, that format, right? So the format is going to be the following. We're going to have the full day like this, then a comma, and the full month like this, and the date like this. So if we go back here, we have the current. So we have an error here because the initial value is null for the selected day, but this is not good. It shouldn't be like that. We can just change the initial value. It's not to be null, but just an instance of dayjs. So in that case, if we refresh, the default value is going to be the current day. But if we select a different value, for example, 24, it should also be 24. We should also be able to create an event when we click here in a place like here. So let's do that. Let's move to the day component. That's the place where we have every day row, and below the header we're going to have a div, and this div is going to have a class name of flex1. So it goes all the way down, and it's going to have a cursor pointer class, so it looks like a button. And here, well, it doesn't have anything yet there. I will just put that in there as a placeholder, but it has an on-click event. And what's going to happen when we click in here is we need to use the context. So we don't have the context here yet, so I will use that context with a hook, use context, and here I can pass the global context. Remember to import those, and I can say set day selected. We're going to select the day, and set show event model, so we can display the model. And that's what we are going to do. So we are going to say set day selected. It's going to be the day that we have as a property here, this day, and below that we can show the model. So we need to pass this as true. And now if we click in any of these places, you can see that it's going to create a new event for that day, 24/24, and also from here. So let's go back to the modal. So below the current date, we're going to have another icon. So let's copy that icon, and this icon is going to be called segment, like this. It has the same classes. This one is just this icon to add a description. So for the description, I'm just going to copy and paste the same input, but we are going to have another state for that. So it's going to just be this description and set description. And the description is going to be an empty array at the beginning. Here we are going to read from the description, and here we are going to set the description. And the name is not title, it's description, and the placeholder is add description. One other minor change is that the text is not going to be XL for this, so we can just remove that. And the font is not going to be semi-bold, so we can reset that. And here we have the description. So now we are going to have, below that, we are going to have another icon. I'm just going to copy this, but the icon name is going to be this one, bookmark border, and this is going to be for the tags. So at the top of this file, I'm going to declare a new variable that's going to have all of the different types of colors for labels that we can have. It's going to be indigo, gray, green, blue, red, or purple. And we can loop through that array to display different labels options for that. So let's start with the container. For that, this is going to have the class of flex, and it's going to have a gap in the x-axis of 2. This is the container, and now we can loop on those labels with map as before. Here we can just say something like label class, like this, and well, we also can read the index to use as a key. And for the JSX, here we are going to return an span object, and this is going to have the key, as the key is going to be the index that we have. Then we are going to give it a class, and this is going to be the dynamic, so we need to add those backtails. It's going to have a background, and here the background is going to be from this class that we had here, label class, with an ascent of 500. Then we need to define a width that's going to be 6, a height of 6. It's going to be rounded at the full. It's going to be flex with the items at the center, and also justify center. And finally, it's going to have the class of cursor and pointer. So that's going to be the class name for this. And now we're just going to have icon. So let me copy again this, but the text is going to be white and the text is going to be small. This is just going to be a tick, so we can have something, and that's the name of the icon, check. And this is what we have. So right now everything is selected, as you can see. So let's fix that. And we're going to use the context for this. Well, not the context. We don't need the context. We can keep this in here locally. So I'm going to duplicate this state, and we can say selected label and set selected label. So now let's just give that here. Once we click on that container, we are going to set selected label, and it's going to be the label class that we have here. Here the initial value is going to be the first one of the array, so we can have it like this. And now once we click that, we are going to change the selected label, and we are only going to display the check once that label is selected. So we can use a conditional that says if the selected label equals the label class that we have here, only if that's true, we are going to display this JSX. That's the icon. So now you can see that we can have some selection here every time we click. So most of the form is done. The only thing that is missing is the footer of that form. So we can go below this div, I think. Let me see. We have a lot of divs. Yeah, just before the closing tag of the form, I'm going to have a footer. So I can have the footer like this, a footer tag, and this is going to have the class name of flex. We're going to justify the items at the end. We're going to have a width of 100 and a border of at the top. That's going also some padding and a margin at the top. And here we are just going to have a button that's going to be the type of submit to submit this form, and it's going to have the class of background blue at 500, and once we hover, it's going to change that to background blue 600. A padding on the XY axis of 6, a padding on the Y axis of 2. It's going to be rounded, and it's going to have the text white. And here it's just going to say save, like that. And this is the result. Now I think we don't need this width of 100. I don't think we need this. So let's see. Yeah, we don't need that. And now let's make it work. Alright, so for saving the events, we're going to get a little bit fancy. We're going to use a reducer hook, and that's going to come in handy because we have to save different kinds of events. Like deleting or updating an event. So let's go to the global context, and we're going to have, well, not here. Let's go to the context wrapper. And here we are going to have an hook that's going to be the use reducer hook. So we are going to import that from here, and we first need the state. So this is just going to be like before, where we first declare the state. It's going to be saved events. That's the state. And here we're going to have a function that's going to dispatch different types of events for the state to change. It's going to be called dispatch called event. So we have that now, and this use reducer takes 3 parameters mainly. The first parameter is going to be the reducer. So the reducer is just a function. Let's declare that function. So let's call it saved events reducer. It's just going to be a function that has, first it has the state, and then it has the different the events that we push to the reducer, and this is going to be an object that's going to have a type, and also it's going to have a payload, and this is what we are going to pass every time we dispatch a new event. And this reducer is just a different way of declaring a state. It's nothing from nothing weird. We just are going to have a switch statement. We are going to switch between different types of events for this reducer. So we need to have this here, this switch type. And here we have different cases that are going to be the types of dispatch that we have. So we can have, for example, a type of push. And this one is going to be when we create a new event, it's just going to push to the current state. So we can just, and we need to return a state for this, right? So we're going to return the current state, and the current state is going to be an array. And we are spreading that array so it concatenates with the payload, and the payload is going to be the new event. So that's the case when we are going to push. The default, we're going to throw a new error because that's not a type that we allow for this reducer. So that's the case when we push. And let's declare the other cases. So we are also going to have a case where we update a current event. And for that, we are going to return, we're going to take the state, and the state, remember that the state is going to be an array, and that is going to have an event for each element of that array. We can run this callback, and here we are going to take that event and we are going to compare that with the payload. Every event is going to have an ID, and we are going to compare that one with the ID that's been passed. So if the current event that we have for every item, the ID equals the same of the payload, if that's true, so in that case we're going to return the payload, and the payload is going to be the event that's going to be updated. And if that's not the case, we're going to return that event that same event. So this is just a way to updating that event inside that array, because we have a lot of items in that array. We're just mapping through that array, finding the event and replacing that with a new state. And the final case is going to be delete. And for this, we are going to do something really kind of similar. So I'm going to copy this, but the difference is that in here we're going to filter, right? We're going to filter the event when this is different, and we don't need this. So we are going to return a new array that has all the events that are different from the one that we provide into the payload. So we have our reducer. Now we need to pass that reducer as a first argument. Then the second value is going to be the initial value. And the third one is an initializer that can be an array, a function. So we're going to use that function, and we're going to declare that's going to say init events. And we are doing this because we're going to save these events into the storage. So we want to grab that from the storage. It's not always going to be an empty array. So that's why it's really nice that we can use this function. We're going to say storage events equals, and here we can use the local storage object and the get item method. And the key is going to be called saved events. And now we can say something like parsed events, and this is just going to be this. If this is not undefined, because this can be undefined, for example, the first time. So that is the case. We're going to, because this is a string, we need to parse that string. So I can say JSON.parse, and we can use this right here. And if the storage events is not present, we can just return an empty array. So now let's just return that. So this is going to be the initial value, and we can represent that in a function. And now I can just pass that function here. So we have that. And the last thing that I want to do in here is that I want to use an effect. So every time the saved events change, so every time this change with the reducer, what I'm going to do is just I'm going to save that into the local storage with set item. And here I'm going to use that save events key that we have before, and I can JSON that stringify the saved events. So in that way, every time this changes, we are just saving that directly into the storage. So we have everything set up, but now we need to dispatch those actions. So I can just send this to the value of the context, and this is what also is going to be used in the global context, and this is just a function, right? So it needs to be in both places with the same name, remember that. And yeah, now, well, I can say that this is an object that has the type and has a payload. Now, if we go to the event modal, we can have a button. We have a button, and this button is just going to be handle submit. So we have the handle submit, and if now we can use the dispatcher that we have. So is what was the name? This dispatch called event, and we are reading that from the context. So now we can declare a function that's going to be handle submit, and here we are going to first declare what's in that, how is that event. So I can say, well, first we need to read the event, the DOM event, and we are going to prevent the default. The default is that the page is going to reload, so we don't want that. Then I'm going to declare a new variable called calendar event, and this is just going to be an object, and it's going to have the title from here. It's also going to have the description like this. It's also going to have a label, that's one is the selected label. It's going to have a day, and the day is going to be the day selected, that value. So I store this like this. Is value of. Value of is going to have like a number, like it's just going to be a number, a timestamp, and I store that like this because if we just store the selected value, it's going to be the whole dayjs instance, so we can't stringify that. It's not possible, but we can stringify a number, so that's why I store that like this. And the ID is just going to be the current timestamp, so just to have a unique value, is going to be, all the time is going to be different, so that's going to be the ID. Now that we have the event, we need to dispatch that, and we already know how to do that. So we just dispatch the cal event like this. And here we need to pass an object, right? So we need to give it a type, and the type needs to be, in this case, is going to be push, because we are pushing a new event, and the payload, remember the payload, is just going to be this object. So we are updating that, and now we can set shows event model. So we are going to close the model like this. So this should work, so let's test it. So if I create a new event, so new event, we can have a description, hi, and save it. If we look into the storage here, go to the local storage, we can see that here we have our events. So it's working because we have that into the console, and here we have the label and everything. So we can test and try to save another one with this Friday. And let's give it this. And now we have two values into the storage. So we have the values, but we need to display those into every day, right? So we need to display those events into every grid. So for that, we are just going to open the day.js component, and here we are going to read from the from the saved events, but we haven't exported that yet, so let's do it now. So we're going to have a saved events here, and don't forget to add a comma here. It's going to be an array, and in our context wrapper we already have that, right? Is here, so we just need to pass that into the value. Now that we can read those saved events, we are going to use some state here. So let me move this below, and the state is going to be day events set day events, and this is going to, we need to use the use state. The initial value is going to be an empty array. So we are going to use another use effect hook here, and what this is going to do, this is going to take as a dependency the saved events. Let me move this at the top. It's going to take this as a dependency, the saved events, and every time the saved events gets updated, we are going to find the events of the day. So we can say something like events equals, and here we can just grab those saved events, and I can filter. So I'm going to filter in that array, and here I have an event, and I'm going to use dayjs for this. I'm going to pass the event that day. So as a constructor, we can pass this timestamp, and it's going to create a new dayjs object for us. And then I can format that. So I'm going to compare two strings. I can format that like this. So I can compare that to the day that we have as a prop, and here I can format that with the same format to compare it. So this is going to give me all of the events that correspond to this day, because we are filtering that out. From all the events, we are just filtering the ones that belong to this current day. Then once we have that, we can set the day events. And the value is going to be these events right here. And one other thing is that we need to add this day as a dependency, because this day right here, because we are also depending on that to update this value. So that's going to set the events that belongs to this state, and now we need to display that, and let's do it. So we are going to, in this div that we have, that's like the body, we are going to have a day events, and this is the array that we have at the top. We're going to map through that array. So we're going to have an event and an index, and right here we're going to return another div. The content is going to be the event that's title, and this is the title of every event is going to be the content. And here we are going to have a class. The class is going to be dynamic, so we need to use curly braces and template strings, and it's because we're going to have a background that's going to have the event, that label. That's the color of the label. It's just going to be with an accent of 200, and below that we are going to have a padding of 1, a margin right of 3. The text is going to be gray. 600 is going to be small. It's going to be rounded also. We're going to have a margin bottom of 1, and we're going to truncate the text, and this is because we want, if the title is too long, we just want to display like dots, and I think that's everything that we need here. So let's see if that's working. Of course, we need to use the key. For every map item, we need to use the key. And yeah, it's working as it should. So we can see that we have different colors for every event, and it's being displayed in the correct place. So now what we need to do is, once we click here, it should show this event, right? It's not working like that now. It's not showing the title, and again we're going to use context for that. So let's go to the context wrapper, context wrapper, and here we are going to have another state, and this is going to be called, let me just duplicate this one. It's going to be called selected event, right? And the value is going to be set selected event. The initial value is going to be null. So at the beginning, nothing is being selected. And don't forget to pass this here and here, set selected event to the value. And we also need it in the global context, like this. And this one, like this, as a function, and in the global context. So now let's go back to the date, and once we click into that event, into that tag, into that we first need to consume the context. So we have set selected event, and that's going to be what we are going to do here. So once we click, we're going to set the select event to the current event that we have in here. So now that we are setting that, we need to read that into the model. And again, I can do it right here. So selected event. And what's going to happen is we're going to reference that select event, and we can say in the use state, for example, the title. Let me grab this right here at the top of the. So for the title, for example, we can say selected event, and if this is different than to null, so we can check that like this. If we do have a select event, So we are just going to have the selected event dot title. If that's not true, we are going to have an empty array. So that's how it's going to be pre-populated. The same for the description, but this one is for description. And for the label, it's going to be a bit different. And that's because that's an array, but that's not an issue. So if we have a select event, if this is true, we're going to grab the label classes, and we're going to find the one that's equal to the labels. It needs to be equal to the selected event that label. And if that's not true, we are going to, if this is true, we find that into our label classes, and otherwise we just pick the first element. So that's with the state, but we also need to, so if we have a selected event, so in that case we're going to dispatch an event, but this event is going to be different. So I'm going to add an else here. So the else clause is going to remain the same, but when we have an element selected, the type is not going to be push, it's just going to be update, right? And this remains the same. So that should take care of updating the event. And now we should also display in a header, we should also display a trash icon. So I'm going to wrap this into a div element. I'm going to move that in that close button inside here, and here I can say something like, if we have a selected event, so in that case we are going to have a button that's similar to this one, has the material icons outlined, the text grade, but also has a cursor or of pointer. The name is delete. And also this one also has an on click event, right? So the on click event is what's going to do is going to dispatch a call event, and this is going to be of the type delete. That's the type that we need for this. And the payload is going to be, what's going to be the payload is just going to be the selected element. Selected event. All right, so I'm going to have this between curly braces, because after this I'm going to set show element to false. I'm going to close the modal. One thing here to keep in mind is that here the ID, if we have a selected event, if this is true, we are just going to grab the current ID. Like this, we are not override that, so only when it's new, that's when we are going to invoke this function. So that's it. So let's test and see if this is working. So if we click here, we can see that, yeah, it's working. We have the correct title, the correct description. If I update this, it didn't work. So let's see. So let me clean this. So you can see that actually it updated into the local storage, but it's not being updated here. And I think I know why. I think saved events. So this should be called every time the saved events change. Let's see if that's happening. So if it, oh, I know why it's not changing. It's just because I'm not changing the description. If I wanted to change, yeah, that will work. So let me just remove this console log. Seems that I also have a console log in here. So, oh great, never mind. And if I change the tag, yeah, it changes the color, and if I click here, it should go away, which is great. So we're really close. The last thing that we need to do is we need to be able to filter by tags. And for that, let's start with the UI. If we go to the sidebar, we're going to have a component called labels. Let me create that component. Labels.js, React functional component. Let's go back here, import labels. So we have the component. Now let's build the component. We need to Alright, so we need to have some state for those labels. So let's go to the context wrapper, and here we're going to have an state again called labels. Set labels. So these one are going to be the labels that are available, and we are going to use some state, and the initial value is going to be an empty array. So we don't have labels at the beginning, but now we are going to have a use effect that listens to the saved events, but this one is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to set the labels based on the saved events. We're going to extract from the events, we're going to extract the labels. And we need to, in this case, we're going to read from the previous labels like this. So if we use set state like this, we as a callback, we have access to the pref labels. And inside here, we're going to return a new array, right? So this array is going to be a new set. And what's a set? A set is just a data structure that is like a list, but only has unique values. Because if we take in consideration all of the events, some labels are going to be repeated. So we have a unique set of values. That's what we use new set, and we spread that to convert that into an array. So this can take as a constructor an array. So that array is going to take the saved events, and we can map into those events. We're going to have an event for each item, and what we're going to take here is we're going to take the event.label. So we have the set that has unique labels with it. Now that we have that, we're going to map into that array that has unique labels. For example, it will only have one instance of red, of indigo, of blue. And we're going to take that label and we are going to return an object. So this is going to have an object that's first going to have the label, and then it's going to have a checked value that's going to be a boolean. And for that boolean, we can say it current label. So we're going to take the previous labels that we have here, and we are going to see if that label exists already. So we can take that label and we can compare that label, because this is an object. We're going to access the label object, and we are going to compare that with the current label that we have in the loop. So this is going to return the label, or if it doesn't find the label, it's going to return undefined. So if we do have a current label, if this is true, we are going to just take that label and return the current value of that checked property. So we're not going to override that. But if that's not the case and is adding a new label, we're just going to return true. So we have kind of confusing, but we just are building an array of objects with labels that has the property of the label and a checked value. And we're doing that because this is going to be a checkbox. So we just want to keep track of the state of that checkbox. And if the label already exists, we're going to just use that already exists checked value from the saved events. Otherwise, we're just going to check automatically the new label. So every time we create a new event, it can potentially create a new label for us to filter. So we have the labels. So now let's also export those two things. So we have set labels, and we also need the labels itself. Set labels and the labels. And now if we go to the global context, we also need to have this right here. So let me just copy this so I don't make a mistake, and I can have it like this, and the labels like an empty array. Now we have that into the context, so we can now read that in here. We can just use the context like this, use context, remember to import that, and here we can pass the global context that we also need to import, and here we can just grab the labels. So if we go back to the labels component, we can say something like label. Label is just going to be, this is just the Alright, so let's first, here we need to first have like, we're going to have a React fragment again, React.fragment, and inside here we're going to have a p tag that's going to have the class name of text gray 500 and a font bold and a margin of 10. And inside here it's just going to say label like this. And below this we're going to map through the labels from the context, so we can map into that label. We're going to have a label property inside here that I'm going to rename like this, and below that we're going to have a checked property. I'm just deconstructing that from the parameters from the object, and I also will have an index like this. And here I can return my JSX, so I can have it like this. Label. The key is going to be the index that we have there, and the class name is going to be of items center, margin top of 3, and it's going to be displayed as block. Inside here we're going to have an input, and this input is the type of checkbox. Checked is going to be equal to the current value of checked that comes from the label object, and the class name is going to be also going to be dynamic with backticks. It's going to be a form checkbox, and this comes from the plugin that we added. This is not a native class from Tailwind. This is from the plugin. Age of 5, a width of 5, and the text is going to take that label color that we have. And 400. It's going to be rounded. It's going to have once we focus, it's going to have a ring of 0, cursor of pointer, and below that we're going to have a span tag, and this is just going to be the label name, the color. We can give it a class name of margin left of 2, text gray of 700, and we're going to capitalize that. So let's go back here, and yeah, we have the label. And if we add a new one, let's say this green one, and we save, we have it right here, but we can't change the state. So let's do that now. How we change the state is we need our own change event listener, and then here we are going to have an update label. This is going to be an object. This doesn't exist yet. We're going to add that to the context, but let me just have it like this, and then I will add that. So it's going to have a label, and that's going to be this label from here, and the checked value is going to be the opposite of what we currently have, right? So if it was true, once we click, it's going to be false, if that makes sense. So it's just going to invert that, because these are booleans. We can have something like that here. In the context wrapper, we're going to have a function that's going to say update label. Is the function that we haven't yet. So if I go here, this function what's going to take is the label as a parameter. And this is the object that we declare. And here I'm going to set those labels. So I'm just going to grab the current labels. I'm going to map through that. I'm going to have a label right here. I'm going to compare that label. So that's the color with the label that we have from the parameter. So like this. And if this is equals, we're going to just replace that label, right, with the updated value. It's the same thing that we did here. We're doing that but now for the labels. And if that's not the case, we're just going to return the original label. We have that. Now let's pass that here, update label, and do it. Let's do that also here. And this is just a function. So now let's see if that works. So we can change the state of the checkbox, but nothing is happening here. And we need to filter that. So we are going to do that also in the context wrapper. And we are going to use another hook for this one that's called use memo. And we're using use memo because this is going to be like a little bit expensive operation. So we want to do it in an efficient way. So we are going to declare a new state that's going to be called filtered events. We're going to use this use memo hook. Remember to import that from React. And this use memo is just going to have computed values. So it also takes dependency list. So what's going to be the dependency list is going to be the saved events and the labels, because this is filtered events depends on those things. So it's just like a computed value, computed property. So we need to return something. What we are going to return is, and this is like a callback that we need to have. We're just going to return the saved events. We're going to filter into those events. We have an individual event here. We're going to take the labels from here. And what we're going to do with those labels, we're also going to filter, because this is an object. We have a label right here. And what we are going to filter in here is just the labels that are checked. We can do it like this, because we can do it like this because this is a boolean. So only when this is true, we're going to have only the labels that are checked. And once we have that, we're going to map those labels. So we only have the strings, the labels, that label. This is just only the string. And we are going to check if this array includes what includes the event from the saved events the event that label. A little bit confusing again, but we're just like filtering in. We have all of the events, right? We're filtering in those events one by one, and we're checking. We're filtering in the labels that are checked. We're mapping that through strings, and we're using the includes method that will check if this string that has only labels that are checked includes the label of the event. If this is true, then we are going to display that event. So, and we are using memo because we want to memorize these values. We don't want to render this every time we render anything here. So that's why we're using that. Now we can just pass this right here, inside here, and also into the global context. It's going to be an array, and inside the dayjs file, we are not going to read from the saved events. I'm going to replace that with the filtered events, right? So I'm just replacing that in the places that I was using saved events, but now the source of true is going to be the array that's filtered in between all of the events. So if we go back, and you can see that now we can hide or show different things depending on the things that we have. So, and if we add a new color, it preserves the previous state. So yeah, let's try it like this in another month. And if we remove that, it doesn't show in any place. So there's one more thing that we need to fix is, if you can see, I selected this, but if I create and try to create a new event, it remains of the previous selected event. So for that, we can just go to the wrapper, to the context wrapper, and here I can have another effect. So this is going to be every time we close the modal. And how we know when we close the modal? Well, we first need to listen to that by passing the dependency. So set show event modal, and every time this is false, so every time this is false, so we can check it that like this. Every time this is false, we are going to set the selected event to null. In that way, we are cleaning every time we close that modal, we are going to clean that. So if we go back and we click here, and now if I click here, it clears out. So only when I click into the modal, we have that, but we can now click below that and it will clean. Also, if I click here, you can see that we have the logic that we have before, and yeah, that's I think the last fix that we need. So thanks again for following the tutorial. I hope you find it useful, and well, again, if you like it, please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.